There are forces of good and forces of evil at work in the world today. What are these forces? Who is responsible for the good? And who is responsible for the evil? Richard Shoff talks about current events which are rarely discussed by the mainstream media, events that affect us all. This program seeks to identify, to inform, and to equip the believer for what's ahead. Welcome to What in the World is Going On?
I'm your host, Richard Shoff. Our program is sponsored by Lincoln Log Homes. We are pro-Christian, pro-life, pro-Second Amendment, pro-American, and here by the grace of God. I've been absent for a week or so due to a voice problem, and it's so good to be back with you, taping this on Sunday, August 1st. Want to look at some headlines that have come across my desk over the past couple of weeks, and boy, have they accumulated. Hard to really select what to bring. But I wanted to look first at former President Trump when he was speaking out in Phoenix, Arizona. That was on Saturday, July 26th, where he warned that we're at the beginning of a communist system here in the U.S. He noted that what's happening to our country has many others. Donald Trump warned that the United States is at the precipice of a communist system. He mentioned this during his speech on Saturday, July 26th. During his speech, Trump's turning point in America, in Phoenix, Arizona, Trump said, "Radicals are seizing power and destroying everything we hold dear as Americans. What's happening to our country has sadly happened to many others. We are at the beginning of a communist system. Radicals are seizing power and destroying everything we hold dear as Americans, and it's happening." And I said it was going to happen. Look at what I've been through for the past few years. Of course, they hold fake, phony elections as well. Trump warned that leftists are censoring speech, hijacking the free press, and dismantling the rule of law. Me talking here now. Yeah, on that last one, I wonder if we're not really seeing it in our own Justice Department under Biden. At this speech, Trump honored Ashley Babbitt's mother. Yeah. And when he did, she received a standing ovation at that Trump rally out in Phoenix. The mother of Ashley Barrett drew a standing ovation at a rally to protect our elections in Phoenix, Arizona. The event headlined by former President Donald Trump. Representative Paul Gosar had introduced Withoff. He noted, "She came all the way over here to tell you thank you." The audience not only gave the mother a rousing bout of applause, but they broke even into a chant shouting, "Ashley, Ashley, Ashley." Who's Ashley Babbitt? Well, in case you have forgotten, she's a central figure in the January 6th riots. Her shooting death, issued by a Capitol Police officer that has not been formally recognized or charged, was the only provable homicide in the event. The decision to shoot Ashley Babbitt has been chalked up as a split-second decision. But anybody that saw the video taken by the man noted that he held aloft his gun for at least 15 seconds before shooting. Police officers were standing behind Babbitt, and they did nothing to prevent her from stopping to climb into the restricted area. It's undeniable that Babbitt should not even have been proceeded to go into this area. However, it doesn't justify the shooting death, nor does it resolve questions about how the incident developed or concluded. The Biden administration of Department of Justice has just announced that the officer will not even be charged for the shooting. The New York Times and other media outlets have branded Babbitt as a QAnon supporter. That's to dispense with public curiosity, I guess, or even sympathy for the woman's death. You know, she wasn't a thug. She wasn't a rioter. She was a peaceful person. This was noted by her cousin, Justin Babbitt. He said, she spent 14 years in the military. She was there to be heard and be part of a movement. Ashley was a diehard patriot not a Democrat, not a Republican. She was for the people. You know, she even carried around the Constitution, the Bill of Rights in her pocketbook. Her attorney, Terry Roberts, commented on the closed case. He said, and I quote, "To date, the officer who shot Ashley has not been identified. Neither the Capitol Police nor any other government authority has given an account of the facts of the shooting or the surroundings around it. There's been no official explanation or justification for the use of lethal force in this matter. This lack of transparency impedes the public's scrutiny, which is necessary to hold government officials accountable in a free society. It also interferes with the ability of Ashley's family to obtain justice for their loss." We've talked about it before, and we'll continue to talk about it until all of the facts come out on this, folks. Yes. Hey, and here's something that I really found noteworthy. Did you see it back at on the political conservative political action conference where Trump spoke out in Dallas? That was on July 9th. Did you see where Donald Trump Jr. led in the favorability poll? Oh yeah, highest favorable rating among 7 Republicans that poll surveyed. That poll of 600 or 800 GOP voters, it was conducted by Fabio Lee and Associates for Access, found out that the firstborn son of President Donald Trump has the highest favorability rating, 55%. He was leading Florida Governor Ron DeSantis by 1 point. And there had been another polling out, I want to point out right now, that showed DeSantis as the highest in favorability in the event that our president, former president, didn't run again. But in this poll, Trump Jr. came in 1 point ahead. He appears to have the best connection with the party's base and perhaps the best prospects for a 2024 White House run if his father opts out. Behind DeSantis came House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy with 24%, Representative Matt Gaetz, 17%, Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene of Georgia, 8%, on down the line. Well, what happened to Liz Cheney? She had a minus 43% rating. Boy, isn't that good to hear. This survey, anyway, was conducted July 6th and 8th. Had a margin rate of error rate of about 3%. And let's look at something on the January 6th committee, the investigation of that. What's behind it? What's going on there? You've heard a lot about it. Well, Jim Jordan and Mark Meadows on Newsmax point out, in their opinion, it's all a political sham. Former White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows and Representative Jim Jordan, Republican of Ohio, told Newsweek this past Wednesday that the House Select Committee investigating the January 6th U.S. Capitol riot was nothing more than a partisan sham. This designed to go after President Donald Trump rather than getting to the bottom of why the incident happened. This is impeachment 3.0, Meadows said. He mentioned this during the premiere of Newsmax Eric Bolling, The Balance Show, a new broadcast on Newsmax TV. Continuing, and to quote Meadows, "This is just a partisan sham. They've already drawn their final conclusions. In fact, they could write the final report right now." Jordan was one of 2 Republicans named to the committee that House Speaker Nancy Pelosi rejected. She had veto power, you know, something that normally doesn't happen when committees are appointed. But anyway, she rejected him and agreed that the committee is only looking to smear the former president, or they would have accepted him and Banks on the committee and allowed them to ask pointed questions about why the Capitol Police seemed so unprepared for the riot. This is completely partisan, a quote from Jim Jordan. The country sees it for what it is. 5 people died and more than 100 more were injured when a group of President Trump supporters stormed the Capitol on January 6th to try and disrupt the joint session of Congress that was tallying the final Electoral College votes for the 2020 election. Among those killed were Capitol Police Officer Brian Sicknick, who suffered 2 strokes and died days later, and as previously mentioned here today, civilian Ashley Babbitt, who was shot to death by a different, unnamed Capitol Police officer. Well, the House voted to impeach Trump for inciting the violence when he spoke to supporters at a rally earlier that day. The Senate voted to acquit the president of the charge. Pelosi then pushed for an independent 9/11 type commission to investigate the incident. Well, that effort was blocked by Republicans, leading her to form her own select committee. Jordan and Banks were among 5 GOP members appointed to the committee by House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy, but Pelosi objected to both. McCarthy then withdrew all 5 names from consideration unless Pelosi approved the 2. She didn't, and you know the story. That's why we're where we're at. Currently, there are only 2 Republicans on the committee, both appointed by Pelosi. Who's there? Well, Representative Liz Cheney and Representative Adam Kinzinger of Illinois. Both, incidentally, voted to impeach Trump in the House and were staunch critics during his administration. They call that a stacked deck, don't they, folks? Meadows said they could have had up to 10,000 National Guard troops at the Capitol on January 6th. They were previously authorized by then-President Donald Trump to ensure order. Why weren't they there? Because Pelosi would not deploy them. Thought you'd like that one. And by the way, here's some questions that won't be asked by the January 6th Commission. This is Dateline, July 29th. So, just a couple days ago, this came out. The January 6th Commission had a dramatic first hearing with lots of crocodile tears and a few real ones. As usual, the Dems and the 2 Democrat-friendly Republicans seemed to agree on an emotional approach to the topic at hand, that to gain advantage over their political opponents. However, they failed to ask and answer important questions. Also, they based their hearing on a false premise. What was that? That the January 6th event was an insurrection. No, folks, it wasn't. If the hundreds of thousands of Americans who attended the peaceful rally before the riot, if they don't wanted an insurrection, we'd have seen a much larger and probably an armed president. This was not the case. There was no arms. These men and women, again, were not armed. Another thing, the commission emphasized how our democracy is in danger from people who think like those who breached the Capitol. It's not hard to imagine that this is justification for government to crush Americans who disagree with it. Here are some primary questions unlikely to come out. First, and we talked this and will continue to, who shot Ashley Babbitt and why? Perhaps she shouldn't have been where she was and doing what she was doing, but she did not deserve to die. The American citizen and Air Force veteran was unarmed. Federal bureaucrats have kept the information on who shot Ashley from Babbitt's husband, as well as from the American people, who have a right to know. Why? Second, the congressional leaders and other elected representatives or their staffs instigate the storming of the Capitol. Did they? Well, the fact that the security profiles at the Capitol that day are woefully inadequate, and National Guard troops were doing other duty and then were denied to Capitol Police, begs this question. Also, the big show the Democrats made afterwards and are still making with the sham, that sham commission, shows consciousness of guilt. In other words, are they trying to cover up something? Third, why have American citizens who have been accused of only relatively minor crimes, such as trespassing, been held in jail without trial for more than 6 months? Why were they roughed up initially and kept in solitary confinement as if they were political prisoners in Cuba? Why are the civil rights being violated? Their civil rights. Does this mean that our Department of Justice has been politicized? And is it corrupt? Fourth, why are American citizens from many states who attended the peaceful rally before the storming of the Capitol being hunted down and prosecuted by the FBI? Example is that a couple up in Homer, Alaska, whom the FBI raided, and a DEA agent who has been persecuted by them. The First Amendment protects Americans from such government abuse of power, and the civil rights of many have been violated after the January 6th event. Has our government completely forgotten its place under the Democrats? Fifth, speaking of the FBI, why were there so many FBI agents present in the crowd at the Capitol? Some have called that a crazy conspiracy theory, but investigative journalist Glenn Greenwald says no. He noted it's what the FBI does quite regularly. Was the storming of the Capitol exploited by the FBI to entrap people? Did bureaucrats and elected officials collude with the FBI? Citizens see that the FBI has been politicized and corrupted. Events since 2016 prove it. Perhaps a January 6th storming of the Capitol was another of their manipulations to destroy Trump and his supporters. Sixth was the October 2020 attempt to kidnap Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer. Was it prior? That was prior to the January 6th event. Was that a dry run for the storming of the Capitol? It's come out that it was an FBI setup meant to entrap individuals. There's a suspicious parallel between the October event in Michigan and the January event in D.C. Seventh, what role did the rhinos who hate Trump play regarding the January 6th storming of the Capitol? Were they just political opponents, or did they have some deeper role with the intention of hurting their adversaries within their own party? Have they participated in post-event persecution of Trump supporters by the federal government? It seems unlikely that Representatives Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger would throw their political careers away just because of Trump derangement. However, we've seen that Trump derangement made by many people, and they've done things that made no sense. There are certainly more important questions to be asked in addition to these, but don't expect that to happen at hearings of the Partisan Commission or through mainstream media. They're all busy emoting, exaggerating, and let us know how sad and traumatized they are. Just wonder, don't you feel sorry for them, folks? Yeah. Don't we all feel so sorry for them? And noteworthy, a governor stands tall. I've made mention that Governor Abbott of Texas can do more from his wheelchair than many can do from their two legs. And once again, he's taken a good stand. The Texas new border plan is to catch and jail the illegals. Texas GOP Governor Greg Abbott said recently, the state isn't playing games. No, not any more game playing. This is the southern border, and it's using their own Texas resources to curb the entry of migrants. In an interview on Fox News recently, on Sunday Morning Futures, Abbott said, quote, he's deploying the National Guard as well as the Texas Department of Public Safety to the area. We're not playing games anymore, he declared. We have a new program in place because the Biden administration planned to catch and release. The Texas plan is to catch and to jail. According to Abbott, authorities are arresting and jailing migrants, this in a program that has already begun. We are arresting people every day, he noted. Abbott said the state's goal is to continue arresting people that come across the border, but at the same time of this surge, more National Guard and more Texas Department of Public Safety officers are there to make sure that we're doing everything that we can as a state to secure the border. Recently, Abbott announced the state was putting $1 billion in its budget to strengthen the border security because the federal government, under President Biden's administration, has failed to do so. Building the wall in Texas has officially begun, Abbott said. He also signed a letter giving $250 million as a down payment for the construction of the wall. A headline of warning, I want to bring this to you. These unrestricted immigrants that are coming in, mass border invasion, this continues. We've got a report, 1 million illegal entries in June, with 20,000 in the Rio Grande Valley sector just 2 weeks ago. Dateline July 25th. The head of the Rio Grande Valley sector of the U.S. Border Patrol, Brian Hastings, sent an alarming tweet. I'll read it to you. His tweet. It's the hottest part of the summer and apprehensions are skyrocketing. U.S. Border Patrol apprehensions surpassed the 1 million milestone in June. Now, this week alone, 2 weeks ago, RGV has apprehended more than 20,000 illegal migrants. The 1 million mark aliens walk into the country while Joe Biden claims to be concerned about the spreading of COVID-19 and how many U.S. citizens we need to mask. Think about it, folks. And with these illegals, where are they now? How many states have received them? I've seen reports of the U.S. flying them in planes, sending them in buses to most every state in the United States. Your state, my state. How do you think they're going to vote? Oh, you think they won't vote? You think they can't get ID? What do you think the Dems are trying to do? Do you think they'll need another pandemic so they could steal another election? Will these voters make a difference? Will these illegals be those voters? You answer the question. We already know the answer, don't we? And from our own government records, 50,000 illegal immigrants were released, but few report back. Roughly 50,000 immigrants who crossed the border illegally have been released, according to Axios. They have no court date. The migrants are told to report to an Immigration and Custom Enforcement office for processing. But you know what? Only 13% of them have so far. The sizable number of people released reflects just how overburdened agencies at the U.S.-Mexico border really are. According to a tweet from Chief Patrol Agent Brian Hastings, the CBP this week apprehended more than 20,000 migrants. He added that apprehensions this year crossed the million mark, as we formerly noted. The release of migrants who entered the U.S. illegally without a court date is unprecedented. Those released have instead been given just a list of ICE officers that they might choose from to report to. Representative Harry Kuehler, Democrat of Texas, reported on Monday that 7,300 immigrants were released last week without court dates. According to a fact sheet released recently, a statement from the White House mentions that, quote, "We will always be a nation of borders, and we will enforce our immigration laws in a way that is fair and just. We'll continue to work to fortify an orderly immigration system." If what we're seeing, folks, on our border with Mexico, it is anything but orderly and a protection for our country. Another thing, headline that I want to share with you needs to be noted. Remember Dr. Jackson? He's the former White House physician, Ronnie Jackson. He's now a U.S. representative from Texas. He made some comments after observing Biden's television town hall this past week, writing, "Our president is completely incoherent. He has lost it, and he needs a cognitive exam, and he needs it now." Jackson, the former White House physician, on Twitter said, and I'm quoting, "Something seriously wrong with Biden. It's only going to get worse. It's past the point of embarrassment. He's lost, he's confused, he can barely put a coherent sentence together. He must have a cognitive exam and release the results." The congressman also noted on Fox News that, quote, "There's something seriously going on with this man right now, and I think that he's either going to resign and they're going to convince him to resign from office at some time in the future for a medical issue, or they're going to have to use the 25th Amendment to get rid of this man. White House officials said in May that the president was scheduled to take an annual physical exam later this year, and they promised to make the result publicly available. That's a report from the Hill. Let's see if it happens and what the results are. And where does this leave all of us? Well, another report that I received points out that the majority of Americans have shifted from optimistic to pessimistic about the direction of our country, a mainstream poll report. According to this new poll, the majority of Americans are pessimistic about the direction of our country. This at the end of the 6-month mark of the Biden administration. And folks, it's a dramatic shift from the last time that the survey polled respondents on the matter. A majority, 55% of the public, say they are now pessimistic about the direction of the country. That from roughly 1/3, 36%, that said the same thing in an ABC poll on May 2nd. Some negative findings for the poll? I'll cite them for you. Question, do you approve or disapprove of the way Joe Biden is handling immigration and the situation at the U.S.-Mexico border? Approve, 37. Disapprove, 61. Wow. Do you approve or disapprove of the way Joe Biden is handling gun violence? Approve, 37. Disapprove, 61. Do you approve or disapprove of the way Joe Biden is handling crime? Approve, 39. Disapprove, 58. The mainstream poll, Gallup, released new numbers last week that also showed that Biden was headed in the wrong direction as he scored the lowest numbers yet of his presidency. This in a left-wing poll. Biden's latest approval rating of 50% is down from 56% in June. Before this month, his ratings had not shown meaningful variation during his time in office, and the current figure marks the lowest measure for him to date. Well, the new rating is from a July 6 through 21 Gallup poll, which also shows that 45% of U.S. adults disapprove of Biden's performance, and 5% do not have an opinion. It comes at a time when U.S. progress in fighting the coronavirus has stalled. Vice President Kamala Harris' favorability rating is also underwater, as more voters hold unfavorable views toward her than formidable views. Just thought you'd like to know. I guess we know one reason now. Why? I want to close with this article. Got it from Ted Knoll. Thought it apropos to bring to your attention at this time. Quoting our Lord, Jesus said in Mark 10:44, "Whoever wishes to become great among you must be your servant." When we first turn our gaze from the first century Judea to Washington, D.C., it becomes difficult to find any great people. You know the 17 intelligence agencies that supposedly found a link between Donald Trump's 2016 campaign and Vladimir Putin aren't populated with great Americans. Service to America is measured not by lies, but by truth. Yes, they were performing a great service to their constituents, a mutual admiration society. When we gaze at this, it makes us realize what is missing today. They were outpouring a great service to their constituents, a mutual admiration society built on subterfuge, inertia, and concentrated power. Perhaps the greatest example of greatness is the man who may be the most publicly imperfect person in recent memory, Donald Trump. The 45th president was accustomed to fawning public attention. His golf courses were sought after He was a frequent guest of public figures and had a wildly successful reality TV show. His personal wealth was beyond the imagination of most, and he was on his third trophy wife. He had nothing to gain and much to lose by running for president. Many argued that Donald Trump was totally unfit, and if we were selecting a religious leader, they'd have been right. He punched back at trivial insults, often losing track of bigger objectives. He used superlatives in place of normal speech. He seemed to pick fights. His ideological compass seemed missing. He had been a Democrat and contributed Democrat candidates, including the woman who became his original general election opponent. But he had one lodestar: America. Make America Great Again became MAGA, M-A-G-I, the rallying cry for millions who were sick of leaders who used powers to get rich. They were sick of people who campaigned on one thing and forgot it as soon as the last ballot was counted. Congress critters in safe seats were even worse. Unless they happened to run up against a Dave Brad or Alexander Airhead Cortez, they were free to completely ignore the voters. Donald Trump offered a change. And what a change it was. Here was a phenomenally successful and wealthy man who put himself on the line. Unlike Michael Bloomberg, who spent pocket change from his vast personal wealth to run for president, Trump spent something approaching 10% of his fortune. While in office, his actions were contrary to anything that was ever seen before. Trump was promises made, promises kept. He offended foreign leaders by bluntly reminding them of their objections rather than leaving Americans on the hook for Germany's commitments. He held hostile foreign governments accountable, bringing China to their negotiating table and Iran to its knees. He thought outside the box, negotiating the Abraham Accords that brought a measure of peace to the Middle East. And he stopped an invasion of destitute Spanish speakers crossing our southern border. Along the way, Donald Trump was accused of everything conceivable. He was called names beyond comprehension. Yet he found his measure by standing up to his enemies while preaching America first. Because of his enemies, his financial standing declined, again by numbers most of us cannot count. None of it mattered much, because unlike Trump's enemies, don't call them opponents, because they aren't that benign. Unlike his enemies, Trump truly loves America. And you see, he pledged his life, his fortune, and his sacred honor to uplifting all Americans. Love him or hate him, Donald Trump is a great man. He spent his fortune to run, and once elected, he devoted his energies to serving us. Yet, he is a deeply flawed man, but he is a servant, and that is the essence of greatness. And as of today, as I bring this broadcast to you, he still stands tall. He still stands ready to serve again. And he is ready to make America great again. God bless until our next broadcast.